Welcome to the Geotab 5.7 What's New webinar. Following is a pre-recorded message from October 18th. The Geotab 5.7 software updates include the following enhancements. The login screen, dashboards, mapping, reporting, users and drivers, NFC Identification, Geotab Drive, improved stability and security, and much more. An exhaustive list can be found in the product guide. We will break these up into 3 sessions with question and answer periods to assist you in getting familiar with the new software. We have Heather as our host with Jordan, Angie, and Stephanie walking through enhancements and the new look and feel.
We're going to have Jordan Guter is going to lead us in our training session today. Folks, you know the drill. If you want to ask questions or make comments or anything, please do enter them into the questions tab under the sidebar GoToMeeting panel. And I'll keep an eye on those along the way as we have Jordan and Angie here as well with us to lead the training session on 5.7. So on that note, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to actually hand it over to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully things are going well for everyone on here, and feel like the new changes we made to 5.7. So the first step is actually started before we even get logged in. The entry page, as you can see, is a little bit different in that you don't see that plus button that we used to always have at the bottom left of the login page. That is because we have changed how logging in works. It is now no longer based on the database you enter here, but actually in the URL. So when you first connect to my database, normally you wouldn't see the My3. We're just using our development database right now. So please bear with us that this is a development database. We have a lot of testing going on. So if for some reason we do end up in a little bit of a slow spell there, it's probably because tests are being run on it, although we're trying not to do any of that right now. So you'll be sent to the mygeotab.com/landing page. So this is great for your customers because they no longer have to worry about the database. There's no question there. Nothing will pop up. And they can just use their username and password, and it'll log them right into the database that they belong to. This is huge because we did have some complaints that people weren't quite sure what that meant. So for the reseller side of things, though, when you want to log into a specific database, you actually have to put it into the URL here after that / and put in your database name. In this case, we have G560. It'll still bring me to the same login page, and if for some reason a customer or somebody else was sent to this page, they would still be logged into their database if they were only in one database on the Federation. But for you, this is the only way to get into specific databases. So from there, I'll just log in. And as you can see, we have a little bit of a different screen here with the different symbols, dashboard placement, and notifications at the top here. So, and by default, this arrow, I believe, is also a new change if anyone's coming from the 5.6 that's from a bit ago. So the first step is just pointing out that the symbol changes are mostly due to branding. We're just trying to brand our symbols, trying to keep everything, more Geotab based, and this will also match up with my admin with the changes upcoming for that. So we're going to try and make everything somewhat seem more similar and the same, so you can tell it's a Geotab accessible site or based off of Geotab. One thing I want to point out is under the Getting Started, it's not in here quite yet, but the Geotab guide is going to be revamped. It's going to still look similar, but it's actually going to be set so that theoretically, if you're a person who did not know how to use Geotab at all, if you read through it, you would be able to do basic functions and be able to run it properly. This is more so for an end user to do the basic things that they would need to do, not so much for resellers. Obviously, you have to know more advanced tricks and such, and we will be building on that separately. But the Geotab guide itself, the product guide, will be set up to have everything that they need. Right now, we don't have an example of it, but it should be ready by the time we actually release 5.7. One other thing I want to point out is really quick, because sometimes the first thing that users want to do is change their options. Options is no longer anywhere in the administration section. It's at the top right where your name is, and that's where your option settings are. Also, you're changing your password. As you can see, the options are pretty much the exact same. It's just you select them differently. You can change the new default map type. We are now returning to being able to use Google Maps.
So some of the mappings that you're looking at there are specific to us testing with specific map options. All of these will not show up in your brand new databases, but to Jordan's point, the good thing is Google will now be an option. We've been able to finalize our contract negotiations with Google, and they will be a mapping option for you guys to choose.
One thing to point out, though, is that you'll have to choose between Bing or Google, and that will be based out of the system settings options here, where you will set up your options for that.
Just click on the maps, Jordan, before we leave here. Just click on the maps tab so that they can see. That is a by database choice. So the entire database will be Google or the entire database will be Bing. It's not a by user. I just want to clarify that part.
Yeah, and as I pointed out, it's either going to be Bing or Google Maps. Theoretically, you could switch back and forth between them through here, but not in the actual live map options, or as you saw, your options for the default that you would use. So this is where you would select it. Secondly, what's really different and changed here is the dashboard setting. We did hear a lot of feedback, and we know you guys did not like some of the ways that this worked with sorting and ordering and how things were. So as you can see here, I just have a couple of example dashboards. Don't worry that there's no data in there. I just threw some extra ones in there. And in this case, let's say I was more interested in seeing the seatbelt violation trend before anything else. I can actually just click and move it wherever I want. I know this is a feature that a lot of you will like and be very happy for. I can move, obviously it's still limited to the size of the screen, but something to quickly point out is no matter what resolution you're using or medium you're using for this, be it a tablet or a phone, it will always change itself to fit properly on that screen.
Which is cool.
That's really important because when it comes to using mobile, like I mentioned, or tablets, or smaller laptops, or even gigantic screens, you don't have to change any settings. It will already be done.
Yeah, so just while you're on this topic, we actually have a good question here. Is the dashboard layout global or user-specific?
So I actually did a little bit testing this myself because that was my first question as well. So this is personal. So you set it up, it's just like normal for everybody, the dashboards are set up in that way, but any changes you make will be specific to you and your user. And also, I can get rid of them. Now this doesn't actually delete the dashboard from happening, this just prevents it from you seeing it. It actually puts it into a little filter up here. So you can bring it back, and it's obviously going to go to the bottom in this case, and then move it around as you see fit again, and move things around. It's much more versatile, and you have a lot more control over what you want to do, and make it more personalized for you and what you might want to see, and every user who wants it can set it up for themselves. Were there any more questions in regards to that?
No, I did have an interesting question, though, that wasn't to do with, we do have one here that's not to do with the dashboards, but it's a question about will every user will every new database default to metric when you first register a new database? And the actual question is, would it be possible to pick US or metric when registering a new database, which is actually a good suggestion. Right now it will continue to default as metric. However, it's not a bad suggestion to put through as a feature request in terms of the registration when you fill out the registration form. So we'll certainly take that one back with us. I do have a question here about the dashboards. Let me just quickly review it. Okay, so if you close the dashboards, will they stay hidden for your duration of being logged in? Or even if you log out, then in again, you would have to enable it again from the filter.
So I can answer this just by showing it. So I have it so it's filtered out. I will log out and just log back in for you. You up there, as you can see, actually, I don't think I actually saved the settings because I logged out too quick, so I think you have to refresh the page. I apologize right now. That's something we will fix, but it should save the settings that you selected, and it should keep it to you. So there is a background sort of save function for it, and you do have to at least leave the page first before it can actually take that effect. So if I sat here and I removed things, I would just have to leave the page at least. The second I leave it, it's like, okay, it's saved. But if I were to log out immediately, it doesn't quote-unquote save it. Obviously, that's something we'll just try and work on because it should just be immediate. But that was a good question. Moving on from here. Oh.
Yeah, so we do have some more questions before we move on. Will the 5 default reports still occupy the first 5 spots on the dashboard? Okay, so the 5 default reports that are in there now, are we keeping those for 5.7 release? I'm not 100% sure.
Right now we are. We are looking at possibly putting in different ones, more meaningful ones, because we've gotten some feedback from you guys that they might not be the most meaningful. And obviously, this is Angie. Sorry, that I work on a lot of reports, so both myself and Mauricio, we've got a kind of a reports library, and we're looking at that as an option as well. But for now, those 4 will be in there. Originally, yes, they will be at the first 4, but as Jordan has shown, you can just click and drag and move it wherever you want. You can X out, hide it in the list. We now have that ability that it doesn't have to be the top 4.
And I believe we will be adding the capability to remove those default reports.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
I think the conversation internally here, guys, is to absolutely update the default reports so they're meaningful, as Angie just said. So I think we just need to continue those conversations internally and decide on what we want to populate. A few more questions here, guys. Can you get weather on the Google Map? I think maybe that's a question for Google.
Yeah, currently not.
Yeah, I don't think
not in our system anyway.
No, I know Google has the option for, I think, maybe somewhere for historical weather, something or other. I know Bing, I think, has that, but that's like advanced. We don't have that right now.
I've talked to Neil about this in the past. If you have a need for it, why don't you submit a feature request? Because I think it is something that I have heard before. So I think it's something we could consider. I mean, it's obviously not going to be in 5.7, but it doesn't mean we can't add it shortly thereafter.
Another good question here. Can you change the size of the charts on the dashboard?
So the size is based off of how you make it in the custom report itself in the Excel. That's how you can at most change the size of it. As you probably worked with Angie in the past before, when you create that graph and you size it within Excel, that's what will determine the size in here.
Yeah, that part will unfortunately never change because it is set on, because it is an Excel document, it is kind of set on the settings within that Excel document.
Yeah, a couple more questions here. So this one goes back to logging in, and I just think you might need to reiterate it. On login, if you no longer need to enter a database name, can the same user name no longer reside in multiple databases?
No, you absolutely can. So I was actually going to follow up with something about that afterwards, but you can still reside in multiple databases. Just keep in mind that when you do want to go into a specific one, you have to put it up in the URL.
Yeah, it's mainly for the benefit of the customers, so that they don't have to put in the database that they log into, because obviously the customer only has that one database. So they could just put in, my.geotab.com and just log in with their username and password and not even have to worry about the database. For you guys as resellers, it's not best for you to do it that way, because then it will just log you into the first database that it finds that has your username attached to it. So that's why for the resellers, you just do / and then the database name. And I don't know if Jordan talked about this because I had to leave the room shortly, but that URL, you can actually save that URL. So my.geotab.com / G560 is the name of this database. Jordan could actually bookmark that URL, and he could then
something that's specific, like a live map.
He can copy that URL, because everything's on the web. He can now put that in there. Oh. He just copied the URL of that exact page for that exact vehicle, which you can see kind of up in the URL. You can copy that URL and you can send it to somebody on your team, on the support team, or even our support guys, and it will take them to the exact same spot that you possibly experienced an issue, or that you want somebody to take a look at that trip. But where I was going at with the login is if you actually bookmark that login of my.geotab.com / G560, you can then have like a folder for all of your databases and say, okay, I want to go to this customer right now. You click on that bookmark, and all you get is the login screen, obviously. You log in, and there you go. You're in that customer.
There's one other aspect to it, too. For example, I'll use My6, as some of you know also has 5.7 on it now. If you're in multiple databases, when you first connect to it, you'll actually see all the databases popped up here that you can log in. If I just click on it, it sends me in right away.
Now that's because Jordan didn't actually log out of that database.
Yes.
So if you do log out of that database, it will not show in that list.
So this is Renee's test, and as I get out, it's gone now.
It's no longer in that list. So it's kind of great for you guys. If you don't log out, you'll have all your databases as buttons at the top of the screen. Simply click on it. You don't have to log back in again. It takes you right in. So it's not only, we didn't just do it for the customers, but we did it for you guys as well to make it as easy as possible. Yep.
So after the first time logging in, you'll be good to go.
So there's a couple of questions in here regarding how to set up emailed reports and how to set up dashboards. Essentially, the process is still similar. However, we're not going to cover that in any kind of detail this session. We're going to cover that off in our October 31st session in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks' time? 2 weeks' time. So please join us for that, and hopefully that will segue into some Excel kind of, Excel reporting kind of training as well. So keep posted for that as well. There is a question on when is the release date. I'm going to say November 1st. I'm putting it out there, but
it's not an all Federation release.
It is a rollout.
Yes.
So we're beginning November 1st is the plan. Right now, as you all know, and what Jordan mentioned at the beginning, this is our kind of our test database. We're running through it. Every department is running through it, looking for bugs, looking for features that may not work the way that we want them to. So we're finalizing everything in these last few weeks. Obviously, if everything looks fantastic, we're very confident that all these bugs are out. Then yes, we'll start the rollout November 1st, and it will be a rollout. So it won't be a straight out everybody's updated on one day. It will be gradual.
That's what we're hoping. Again, we'll have more information on that closer to the November 1st date. And like I said, we're hoping to coincide a rollout schedule with end user training. But again, we'll confirm that at a later date. I think I have, I have one more question here. I believe, do I understand that the full version will run on iPads and or Android tablets?
No, but this will lead me into the next part if we're going to go past that. I'll just go right into that. So the idea of Click Once is that we are actually slowly eliminating it. As you know, there were a lot of features before that were still required. Exceptions, example here, exceptions no longer requires the Click Once to run. A lot of others, if we go to the users, the clearance levels no longer needs it. We are basically down to only a few things still requiring the Click Once.
Yeah, there are still a couple of sections. Engine data is online, but you still have kind of like the way you saw it in the map. We have that kind of advanced button where it does take you to the Click Once, but pretty much all the functionality is online. It's just a gradual process. What else do we have? Custom reports is still in Click Once. The maintenance reminders, setting them up, is still in Click Once, and the distributions list, and that's it. So I'd say what 95% pretty much online.
Yeah.
So it's getting very, very close, and we definitely obviously do have plans to move those over to the web.
And I already know that the distribution list should be done pretty quickly. So it really comes down to
so that could be in the
two or three things two things that only require it, and then moving there not. And then especially from the mindset of a non-manager, there are functions that shouldn't even be required by them, because custom reports is more of a manager thing to set up.
So I guess the kind of the answer is yes. I mean, 95% of it will work on an iPad, Android, mobile phones.
That is the goal. Like the reason, one of the main reasons why we moved from that software as a service Click Once type of solution to web-based is so that it can work on any application, any handheld device, any iPad. As we all know, 5.5 was not compatible with Apple. So now it is now that it's 95 or 96% web-based, that 95, 96% is totally available on any kind of smartphone, handheld, tablet device. Absolutely.
And anything with a browser.
Obviously, the plan is to completely eliminate the Click Once. Don't think that we're just keeping this in there for the fun of it right now, just to be annoying and only have one Click Once left. It's just a process because we couldn't get rid of it all yet right away. But the plan is to eventually have it eliminated from necessity, and then theoretically, as you were asking about the iPad, everything will be available. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Hey, Heather, we have a ton of questions flying in. Can we go answer some of these questions real quick?
The next one is, will upgrades to customer databases take place automatically, or will it be like it is now where we create a case with you to initiate the upgrade? I think we need a little bit more information on that. Typically, upgrades to our user interface happen automatically. So if maybe you could clarify the question, we'd appreciate it. The next question is, will custom 5.6 reports work on 5.7? Yes, yeah, absolutely. They absolutely should work. Absolutely, they should. It should be a seamless integration.
Yeah, keep in mind this is not a massive
upgrade like 5.5 to 5.6.
Like 5.5 to 5.6. This is just an update. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Next question: will fuel usage be available per trip in 5.7?
Are you asking them in a trip's history? Because theoretically, you could always do it by putting in your own custom time. But I guess, no, there isn't a specification on that, although I do know that the fuel usage report is undergoing a lot of changes in order to only show necessary data and give you some more options for what you might want to see. It's not completely in here yet, but as you can see, it's still technically under construction. But the idea is to get rid of unnecessary data. And then
if it is related to trips history, it's not available right now. Obviously, if it is a huge deal, something that you want, put in a feature request.
Honestly, it's a good idea.
Our guys are constantly answering those feature requests, and a lot of the times, you know, if they're coming from you guys, they're coming from the customer, and it makes sense. So absolutely, put in a business case. You know, what's the fleet size? What's the use case?
Yeah.
Let us know. Let the developers know.
And sometimes if the feature request is actually fairly quick on our developer side, we'll do it. We'll apply it fairly quickly. If it does take work and building and coding and all that kind of engineering stuff, then typically it could take time to get it done. But still, I think that's actually a very good feature request for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you can tell just from looking at this and probably your own feature requests, a lot of these changes were because of them.
Exactly.
5.7, yeah.
Heather, there's an important one here that I think we need to cover off. Anybody that is running a any kind of integration where you're attaching to the MyGeotab software, you will absolutely be affected by these changes. The SDK has undergone some massive changes. That is what has taken a tremendous amount of work. If you have any integrations going on, first thing, the support team is going to run a query to see which databases are being attached to something else or having data extracted from them so that they can be set aside and give you time to use the new SDK to revamp your solutions. Nothing will be automatically upgraded in that avenue. Okay?
So any of those databases that do have the integration work done on them and do need SDK updates, those databases, those servers with those databases on them will be put to the end of the rollout schedule type thing and give you guys time to work with the new SDK and fix those. Okay, so is there a mobile app for Android and iOS, or will this just be a mobile web access?
Web access.
It is a web access, absolutely. Will there be an app coming out to show a live map with vehicle locations?
Like a simplified version?
They just haven't seen 5.7, Heather. I mean, we're used to looking at it. Just put a couple of vehicles on the map and live. There's another point here. There's a couple of questions about RF, and I think that we should have a separate training session for RF. But we can definitely schedule a separate session for anybody who's got RF, how this affects RF, and we'll go over all of that. Yeah, okay. And so just like we did when we did 5.5 to 5.6, guys, you will receive notification that the server My1 will be updated on November the 5th. Okay, whatever the date is. I'm not saying that's when it is. And all of the databases that you own on that server will automatically be updated on that date. You need to go to your customer and let them know that this change is coming and schedule some training with your end user customer. We will put up some end user training as well.
And as mentioned before, the product guide should be updated to the point where they can just go on and look at it too.
There is a question here actually that Jordan wanted to talk to you about the executable. So we recently sent out a notification because Google Chrome Frame has, well, basically, when is the date? Do you know when it is?
It's the end of the year.
Is it the end of the year?
That's so.
Yeah, basically early January is when it gets discontinued. Would be the end of the year equivalent. So the plan was originally to have a standalone executable that we could give to you that would open up a browser, but we found that there were problems with that because if ever there are updates that the browser required, the EXE would have to be updated every time, and that obviously just wasn't an option for you. So here comes a really good option, but for some of you who don't like click one, it's not a good one. So if you ever connect to my Geotab on a system that cannot run it, i.e. 8, for example, you would actually be given a link that will be a click once executable that would have been the executable we were going to give you, and just open up a standalone browser right there. So basically you connect, your computer realizes, or the browser realizes it can't run it, so it redirects you to a site that gives you a link that is a click once that opens up a browser to use this. And that's basically it. So it'd be the exact same as us giving the executable, except you click it and it runs right off of a link.
Well, there's one quick question here. Will hours of service be running on this 5.7?
Yes.
Yes.
It absolutely will be, and that's
Absolutely.
one of the main changes too that's actually going to be added to it, where it'll be pushed to all of it. And one other question I just see here really quick that I want to answer is just the data structure from 5.6 to 5.7 is going to remain the exact same.
Okay, good.
We'll be touching on the HOS in the later sessions as well.
I think I can
you can go
start moving on. I'm going to start moving on to the live map changes. So as you can already sort of see here, the live map has changed. It's not drastic, and anybody who knew how to use the last one can pretty much jump into this one and start using it too. It's the same with selecting the vehicles, typing them out, looking, but there are some major changes that have occurred. So the first being, I'll mention, is you can now search per driver. So for example, if I search for Neil, I can search and add a driver to the live map, and I can see where he is. It's going to tell me what vehicle he is associated with and where that is. So that's one of the major changes we've added, because a lot of people were requesting to know where the driver was without having to research where the driver was, what vehicle he was in. Mind you, this is using the driver settings, which we'll have to touch upon later or another session with driver keys or the NFC. This is a good example of how to find them immediately. Now, one thing, too, is that this particular device has a Garmin in it. And for those of you that know Garmin grouping, you can actually change the group here to change the situation. So this is better for dispatch, where you might want to know a specific status information or update what's going on with them. So if anybody else is looking to dispatch somebody, they can see what their status is. I could put it into a panic state or breakdown or just on the job. One of the other nice points, well, address you guys already know have been added before, but I just want to touch up on some of this, the side view here where you see all the vehicles appear.
So if you remember in 5.5, we used to have the status of the vehicles and everything at the bottom of the screen. We've now got it on the left-hand side, and it is a lot more functional. Or
yeah, you can do a lot more.
Flexible, yeah.
One good thing is, just to point out, you can just get rid of it. So if you weren't a fan of seeing the vehicles there, don't worry. You don't have to keep staring at them. You want a bigger map. That's fine. As you can see, it's pretty nice to sort of get rid of everything and just see a nice big map. I know that this was a big question that people are asking for. Unfortunately, we still can't completely get rid of the bar up here, or else you really wouldn't have any functionality in my Geotab, but it is a first step, just sort of cleaning it up and being able to look at it how you'd like to. As you can see, we now have a sorting option put in here right away. So by default, it's set by name, but if I want to sort it by the driver and their name, I can select that. There's a lot of options here, and you have to keep in mind that some of this setting and system is a little bit different, so just by selecting the driver, it's not going to necessarily show me the drivers as you would expect it, but it will when you use it. And then by status, which is the status that they are in right now, so I can sort it by stopped.
Yeah, so that status it's not related to the Garmin status. It's related to, you know, if their driving status. Are they stopped? Are they driving? Are they idling? Just to clarify.
Yeah. One of the really nice new features, though, and this is also more say, dispatch related, is I could either type in an address and select that location, or just because I'm in the location I'm not quite sure of and I know where it is on the map and I can click it. I can click on the location, click nearest, and now we get this new sorting feature called distance, which I can sort by to see who is the closest to that location.
And you can see it automatically sorted it by the distance as soon as you hit on nearest.
And I think that's a pretty nice feature for, like I keep mentioning, dispatch and such, but just to see where vehicles might be close to.
Yeah, so now you can see that SV-Go63G has that little triangle there. If you click on it, you can now dispatch them to that location.
Major point, though, is that this is for Garmin users.
Garmin, yes.
Obviously, otherwise you can't dispatch it to something. But again, bringing up the whole dispatch situation is, if they did have a Garmin, you could just select it and they would know how to go there, or you could send them a text message. And this is based off of the setting I had it selected for, because I was specifically selecting a location which is why dispatch is what appeared. And because I have a nearest spot selected. Alternatively, like I mentioned, I can just put in random location, and it will do the same thing on the distance. And you can see it's now based off of this location I just entered. So it's just like clicking a specific spot on an address instead. Do we have another set of questions with all the answer?
Can the vehicles be color-coded on the map by group? Yes, they can. Yeah, it's the Garmin functionality where you can set up your vehicle groups, such as, let's say, electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, if you have those 3 different groups of vehicles. And you set up the groups in the grouping section, and then you can choose the colors that you want to apply to those particular groups. And then when you choose them on the map, they will pop up as that color. So yes, it will be doable.
And it'll be customizable through this option up here, where you can, just like I showed, I can highlight a specific group and just see, who's all part of the NFC display group.
Yeah.
You won't, just because I'm looking at a location where there aren't a lot of vehicles there, but it would just select those ones and sort of highlight them and make them stand out from the others.
And anything else would go gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there any issues with ARIS Go 4 units? Just so everybody's on the same page here, just want to make sure everybody's aware that the Go 4s are discontinued at the end of this year, just in case you haven't been getting our notifications. If they're working now, they're fine. I can't speak with ARIS, so speak to the ARIS cellular modem anymore. As you know, we don't carry that as an option. So if you go into the database and they're working, they're probably fine. Can you send addresses to Garmin unit from the map?
Yes, that's what we just did by dispatching. So
maybe I missed something.
It doesn't necessarily say send address, it's dispatch.
Yeah, it's specifically, sorry, I have to get that list back up. And just because I dispatch. And that's because I still had that last selection selected for the address I put in there.
Yeah, so dispatch essentially means sending an address.
And we can actually open it up, and it'll be based off of a zone that I might have selected or I was in.
So what happens is you have to create the zone, because we cannot dispatch to just a random address. And it's been that way, I think, in 5.6 and this one as well. So you could search for an address. You could even left click and say find address, and then select your vehicle that you want to send to that address. And
maybe give a better example.
Yeah,
not
and then
somewhere.
Just select the vehicle and say dispatch, and then it creates a zone where you want them to dispatch. I don't know if you guys all know, but you can select a zone to be to have it expire if you don't want it to be there, all forever. If it's just a one-time thing, you can set it to expire tomorrow. It'll still hold on to the historic information about that zone, but just so you guys know, you don't have to clutter your system with zones when you're sending your addresses. So Jordan could just say, he knows this is, Tim Horton's location here in Canada, and he wants the guy to go pick him up coffee, just for fun, right? So he could save that as a zone, and then when he hits save, go ahead and hit save, it now brings him to the send address screen. So it already knows the vehicle that he wants to send it to because he selected it in the list. He can add multiple recipients as well, if he wants to, and then he can customize his message. So, go get me coffee, whatever you want. So the message will pop up on the Garmin like it always has with a little, it's a flag, and it will have the message displayed. They can hit go, and then it will take them to that location.
I want to actually send this one out just because it's somebody's vehicle, just so they don't get confused why they're getting these random dispatch messages from us. But as you can see, the live map isn't just a simple matter of looking for one device at a time now. It's actually fleshed out a lot more to be more between both customizable and interactive, because we felt like there's just more needs to be done.
I think there's some more questions.
Yeah, there is. So there's a couple of questions here regarding you guys having access to Play. We're internally talking about moving the Second Harvest database to 5.7 and allow you guys to go in. And as you guys know, that's view only because Second Harvest uses that for their own use. And then will there be videos to introduce 5.7, an overview of 5.7 that you guys can provide to customers who are preparing to migrate? yeah, we are certainly working on that, and we will, as kind of Steph said already, we will as well have coincide the rollout with end-user training sessions, and those will be recorded, to which we can send you those recordings. Okay, if we don't have the actual formal videos completed yet.
Yeah, Heather, I think it's also good to note that the Geotab product guide is the go-to for all training and everything else. That has been worked on extensively, and it will have all of the new features highlighted at the top of the list. So, you know, that will definitely be there with or without the video.
Yeah, and like as Steph just pointed out, that is the go-to, and that's something that we're working on pretty extensively, and we'll keep up to date to ensure that it's always going to be that go-to product guide, not outdated at some point.
There's a question about, will customers have issues logging in on November 1st? No, and just keep in mind that not all customers are rolled over on November 1st. So
all of our upgrades after hours.
Yeah.
There will be no downtime. If there's, you know, a specific customer that, you know, they're really concerned about, maybe they work night shifts or something like that, and they, you know, they. Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
Just as most of you know, we do upgrade servers right now from, you know, the 5.6 to a newer version of 5.6 with bug fixes and such. It's almost going to be exactly the same as that. Since the upgrade is still the same system for the most part, like we mentioned, it's not like from 5.5 to 5.6. The upgrade doesn't take too long. So I don't see it being down for a long enough time if you don't even notice it now to notice it when it happens. So it should be seamless to you.
And your customers.
Yeah. So that's really it I can go about in the live map right here, right now. There's not too much more to get into. As you can see, it's gotten a lot better and more customized. The trips history, again, there isn't much more to add here. Yeah, there we go. And this is because I also had some vehicles selected in the last list, so it's actually just keeping them from the live map to here. You probably noticed that in 5.6 and how it works too. It's just that if you were specifically interested in one vehicle or certain vehicles that you selected in the live map, clicking the trips history won't clear those selections. And because I selected a bunch of them, they'll all appear here. And there isn't much more to go through here. One other major change, though, going forward is the reporting. And the reporting has changed a lot. We want it to be a little bit better from the Checkmate usage point of view, and so when you do make your customized reports, that you can almost see them within Checkmate without having to wait for the email or create one.
You'll notice that it no longer has a button that says reports. It's now called View. So that is the difference. And when you see where it says List is the UI view that you were just looking at.
Yeah. So the report view will actually take us to a whole new screen, and based off of the report that you had set up for it, it will create that report for you. So one of the main reasons we've done this is a lot of you know it's maybe not the best to look at it for the trip's history. Maybe better for the log details. Sorry, helps if I actually go to the right one. And if we just look at today.
So I don't know if you saw what Jordan just did there, but he chose a report from the list, which is just the standard default report template, Excel template. And what it was actually a snapshot of that Excel report. So you don't have to wait, like he said, for it to download, save it on your computer, open up in Excel. It gives you the visual in there. So any of your custom reports that you've made will show up in the UI.
I'll show that again very briefly, but I did want to point out here that I know a lot of you weren't happy with the 500 limit. It has been brought up, so I believe, depending on the report, up to about 5,000. I know it still sucks to have a limit there, but that's a pretty generous one. And again, you can always run it through a report if you really need to see everything. But the first thing you might notice here is how much better and more compact the list is. I know me, as long as probably a lot of you, always defaulted to just using the Advanced tab because it was easier to see a lot more data and it wasn't so cluttered. But as you can see here, it's much nicer. It's compact. Each line is still clearly its own, but it's not annoying to look at and too big on the screen. You can actually see a fair amount of data. And I know I keep pointing out that I'm happy with that, but that's one of the biggest changes for me in here, especially when it comes to the forward, right, and up. If you remember the arrows and how much space that would take up alone, it would be hard to even see the other logs. And this is one of the major changes. And as you can see, it tells you when on the map this happened. You can click on it, it'll show you there in the trip's history. But just to point again, as Angie just pointed out, when I click the report, it will actually open up that report that we have set up for it to look at. Now, because this is a log details and has some data, it's just going to take a little bit of time to load, but once it gets up, you'll be able to see what I mean. And there we go. And this is what it would look like in the Excel. If you had that set up, it just basically shows you what you would see in there. And this probably looks familiar to a lot of you. And then if you did want to export it still, you still can, and you just click these buttons of the report and then selecting.
Can you do me a favor and just go back to the list view? We have a question here, and I think the answer is there. The question is about, in the log details, will there be ability to filter items down to where we're looking for from the web? So I have a feeling group might be what we're looking for. So you can group by reason, record type, also including with the date and time, or by vehicle.
And that was actually a really good question, because I know especially for record type, sometimes that is really important to separate out. So here is a good example of how I'll tell you what data it is you're specifically looking at and where it came from in order to look at it from that point of view. So if you just want to look at the speed information of the vehicle, it sorts it here, and it's all in that order, and you're hopefully happy looking at what you need.
Yeah, it's similar to the way it looked in the click once, where you could just click on the header, for description, and it would sort it like there. So acceleration or all that other stuff.
Was there any other questions about the list specifically?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So I know I was talking about the report, but then you have your other specific advanced reports you might have made. So as you can see, Mauricio went in and he made his own that he wanted, for whatever changes and such you can still click on those that you've made in the custom reports to appear within here in that selection. Now, in this particular case, he made a really gigantic one and didn't set the size up nicely, but you can zoom in on it ever so slowly to see the data much better, and it'll create a scroll wheel for you if you need to go over. Now, this is just because he specifically saved this report in the data tab, but keep in mind, like I said, this is all testing, so that's why this one specifically opened up with a lot of data in there, whereas you guys can set up your pivot table to show exactly what you want and fit in nicely, so when you click on it, you can get what you need. And again, pointing out, you can then just click the Excel or the PDF to download that file that you can see here to see what you need to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't see any questions coming in.
Oh, wow. I'm impressed. Either you guys are really happy or not happy at all.
Oh, there is one question. Is there a 500 device limit on reports?
So I believe, on the reports I did mention, like specifically for the log depot, I believe it's up to 5,000. Don't quote me on that because I haven't actually done extensive tests yet to see the limit of it. But I do believe the last time I did check something, I'm just worried about trying to search for something too big while we're in the middle of a live show here. But as you can see, 5,000 is that limit now. Now I know some of you still aren't happy with the limit, but like I said, you can still look at it in the report. But I personally think that 5,000 should be enough to at least look at more than a day, given a normal day. It might not be if for some reason there's a lot of strange data going on. But at that point, you can still put in the custom times to look at it and find it. But I agree with a lot of you that 500 was just not enough, especially for the log details. You could barely not even look at anything, and that was another reason to go to the click once by default. And then same goes with the other reports too. We tried to increase it by a lot to make it more accessible. Unfortunately, we don't have more than 200 devices in here, vehicles in here, but I believe we're trying to extend all of them. But not all of them will be the 5,000 number I just pointed out. I believe that's just for the log details and maybe the engine data. I'm not sure about vehicles at this point in time.
Okay, so a couple of questions have just rolled in. Can you go straight to a specific custom report, or do you have to view it first? Just want to reiterate, guys, that we're not going to spend too much time on custom reporting today because we have that scheduled for October 31st. But if you do have a quick answer, Jordan, please feel free to...
well, you don't even have to look at a specific report. You can click on the one you want right away. You don't have to go to that first one that I showed you. You will see the list first, but again, that's not the one taking up the time. That's just you can click on. But the list, it just works like before, where you would get your normal data, and then when you click on the report, you can see the report. You can choose which one.
There's a question here about server strength, I think. Are there any limits on how far back a customer can go to generate a report? We don't want to see huge reports killing a server performance for all customers. So we agree with you that there are certainly limits for emailed reports. but generating a report manually?
Well, generating a report manually, if you were to look at roughly, say, 3 years for 500 vehicles, you would eventually time out, because we have an internal timeout feature to stop performance issues on the server for exactly that reason. So I believe it's a time limit of roughly 10 minutes. If it can't get that data within 10 minutes, just going to stop it and cut it out. Because as somebody mentioned, you don't want it affecting the performance. Now, to that point, given the data in it, it can or cannot be done. If we're looking for 3 years of one vehicle that has no engine data and just drives around a bit every day, then maybe you can. Whereas if you're looking at a vehicle that has all this engine data, 8 auxiliaries updating information, has a Garmin in there also connecting to it and an HOS device, and looking at it for 3 years, it's a lot different, because that might be the difference of 10 times the amount of logs. It ultimately comes down to how much data is in there. I can't give a clear, concise answer on that, but we do have a protection in there to prevent any performance issues on the server. It might just lock them out temporarily when looking at it when searching for something, but you can easily just close the browser or just refresh it.
Okay. Okay, cool. So we've had a couple of questions about printing. Now, I think obviously you guys can print, flip into Excel or PDF and print all day long, no problem. But I think printing from the UI itself, and Jordy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but because we're web-based, it's a standard printing tool applies to every kind of web, right?
You're limited by the browser.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately is for everything that's done based on the web. I know there are some options where sites say print the screen and it just loads you to like a PDF or something to do it.
Okay, so if they are processing a fairly large report, I think this is where this question stems from, and I think it's not a bad question. Is there something that's going to tell the customer that it is processing and when the system times out and why? Is there the spinning wheel of death probably?
No, it should eventually tell you that it can't run anymore. With some sort of error message, and I hate to say this, unfortunately, I don't know because I haven't actually been able to trigger it yet. I'm not saying that's because our system's amazing and it never happens right now, but I just haven't been able to create a situation where it can happen. And for sure, I'd love to do more tests on that, and maybe I will do it after this.
They're spying on our devices.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah, the folks are asking about the Go 7 unit. Honestly, guys, obviously there's some testing being done on our end, but it's way early stages. We don't have the release date for the Go 7 yet. Steph, I'm not sure if you have anything to add on that.
It's 2014 at least, so there's that. So, it's not anything that's going to impact any sales cycles in the short term, just saying.
I'm sorry for the spoiler alert, everybody.
No problem. No problem. All right. So we've got 5 minutes, Jordy. Do you have anything else to cover, or are we good?
I know on the list we did have mention about the NFC, but I felt like we wouldn't have enough time in this session to go over that. I guess I can briefly just bring it up in that one of the other major changes that we've done to the system is, as you can see under the activity, there's no longer says drivers in activity because we have a completely and totally eliminated drivers. Now, drivers are now mixed in with users. So, for example, if I created a new user and I didn't want it to be somebody to log in, I could set them up to just a default user so they wouldn't be able to do anything online, or even a nothing, so they can't log in. Sorry, let me just. And I can actually set them up as a driver. So this can be assigned to a key, this can be assigned to something, but still not able to log in or have any power within my Geotab itself. So the exact same. Or you can still also add it to a person who did have something. I can make this an administrator who is also a driver. So it's somebody who logs in here, looks at it, say a manager, but let's say that manager also does drives every once in a while, and when he uses the company vehicles, they want to make sure that he's driving properly. So he can actually be a driver as well and then use his NFC key.
Oh, good case scenario. I wasn't sure about that. Okay, that makes total sense. So you guys will notice that under the key type, you can choose NFC or Go, depending on if you're still using the legacy Go 4 product. Hopefully everybody's kind of moving forward with the NFC. I do have a question here that's not a bad question, and I think it takes the knowledge of the security clearances, and I'm not 100% sure if this is, I don't know this off the top of my head, but can you restrict someone to only create edit drivers and not user accounts? And that would be a security clearance level thing, and I'm not sure if it's separated out in there or not. Did Steph or Jordan, do you guys know?
believe we were talking about that, and that's right here, because that should be separate from
Admin
users.
drivers and admin users, I think it's separate.
Excellent. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Nope. I don't think it is. Put driver there. Yep, it's separate.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay.
One point I just wanted to point out is obviously anything to deal with running the data manager on your computer will still use the click once, and that should be forever. But that's because it actually starts a service on your computer to run it. So don't expect this to ever disappear. But I doubt any of you are going to be using your iPad to run as a radio downloader for your system, right? I just want to point that out really quick while I thought about it, and that was still click once here.
Okay. Okay, very good. So there's actually a pretty good question that I'm sure we're going to run into here. What if a customer is using old and new devices and both kinds of driver ID? Yeah, we can see that happening. What was that, Jordan?
You can interchange software-wise, but obviously not hardware-wise.
Yeah, so the thing from my standpoint is you would probably maybe need everybody to have a driver ID key for the Go 4 option and possibly a sticker, NFC sticker, right, for the Go 6. So they have both, drivers have both on hand depending on the vehicle that they're getting into. Yeah,
the system to be optimized is an all or nothing. Really, you want all NFC or all Go keys. That's not
but that's not going to be the reality. And you're going to have to put a sticker on your driver ID card, or on the. I don't know if you can wrap an NFC sticker around a USB driver ID key. I've never tried it. The old style Go key. I haven't tried it, but that's one thought. You have both. Yeah.
Or you could just put it on a keychain, right? So if you did have a mixed system like that, a driver would basically have to have two keys, the old one and the new one, to be their assigned driver, and then they would have to use whichever one they're going to the vehicle that has the NFC or the driver key.
Yeah. Yeah. So so there's another question here. Will the Go keys for the Go 4s continue to be available even though the Go 4 is being discontinued at the end of the year? Steph, I'll ask you to agree with me or correct me, but I believe yes. We will continue to support the Go 4s for a certain amount of time after the end of the year. I'm not sure what that time frame will be. Steph, do you have any other information on that?
I don't know what the time frame is, but it's just like Go 2 devices. It's not like we just stop selling you an antenna or whatever piece part you need. Well, for as long as we can get the parts, and that's really what it comes down to. That technology is getting a bit aged, and there is a point in time where we have a limitation on that. There's a good question here about if you had two kinds of driver ID keys, do you split the data between two drivers? And I don't know the answer to that question, guys. We're going to have to do a little research on that.
No, because you have to select one or the other for the driver.
I think you would end up with two driver ID keys that you'd have to merge in Excel.
Yeah.
But that is definitely something that we can take away and figure out.
Yeah, for sure.
A custom report could be made using the driver names, the username, to make it work.
Okay. Jordan, I think we're pretty much coming to the end. Are you okay with anything that we wanted to cover off for today?
I'm okay with that for now.
Okay, guys, get your questions in because we're going to sign off shortly for this particular session. And please do join us for Thursday session coming up. I believe that's the 24th off the top of my head. I believe it's at 1:30. If you can't find your email notification that was sent out last week or whenever it was, they are posted in MyAdmin as well, and you can register from there. Okay.
Heather, there is one question that's coming up again and again and again in this list, and I just want to answer it. We are going to build a fuel card integration report into my Geotab. It will not be in the first phase of 5.7 when it first releases in November. We will only begin it in that November timeframe, but we do anticipate having it out by year's end or very nearly there, right after the year end, okay?
Cool. Another question here about future. What about allowing passengers to log in using NFC? That, I do believe, is also on the roadmap. And to my knowledge, there is no time frame of this release, but it certainly is being worked on on our development side of things. Another question, is there a way to delete more than one zone at once, or is it a manual deleting per zone? No, actually, in your zone list...
Heather, let's just come back and do that in another training.
Okay,
I think it's too complicated to try to show, but I mean, this select multiple is in many feature sets.
Absolutely.
Device editing, I think it just needs to be a separate, take your time and show it off kind of deal.
All right. Okay, guys, so...
There's a question about the simplified live view and does it automatically update on a mobile device. It works exactly the same way. It cleans up the menus. If you scrunch a live map down, just put a vehicle on the map and then squish it. That's the easiest way to show it. The more you squish, the more it changes the view automatically for you.
It's actually supposed to do this one automatically. Oh no, this one's your choice because that's the vehicle. So that one you can just click down.
But see how the menus at the top change as well? When you scrunch it in, you get down to you just see a sprocket and not all the individual buttons.
Yeah,
and then you open the sprocket to get to all the different things. Scrunch it some more. See the sprocket? All of those buttons are now inside the sprocket. And there's a question about how do we get into 5.7. The My6 server is the beta server. If you have a database that you want to have moved, you need to open a case and have it moved to the My6 server. We will join you guys again next week. We're looking forward to it. If you have any questions in the meantime, just reach out to us, okay?
Thank you, everybody.